Welcome to Module 4. Our subject is product development. Upon completion of this module, you will be able to convert recipes from imperial to metric, convert ingredients from measurements to weights, upscale a recipe to a production formula, identify essential components of record keeping in case of recall, calculate the production cost of your product, and prepare a survey for taste testing. Many food processors start making a product from a favorite home recipe. A recipe usually has a list of ingredients with the amounts required and the method to prepare the recipe. These recipes and methods are suitable for the home kitchen in small batches. However, they are not appropriate for levels for commercial processing. The first part of this module is converting recipes to weights and metric units. Once you have the understanding of converting recipes to the appropriate weights and units, we will move on to the next steps in converting your recipes into a workable, repeatable production formula. The most consistent measurement is weight. For example, ounces, pounds, grams, and kilograms. Weight is the heaviness of a substance and is used to measure dry or liquid ingredients. Scales are required to weigh ingredients because we purchase most of our ingredients in metric weights. You may also want to convert ingredients from volume measurements to metric weights. For example, if your recipe calls for 2 cups of flour, you will want to determine how much it weighs in grams. Cups, quarts, teaspoons, fluid ounces, and liters are all volume measurements or the space taken by a substance. Even though it may be quicker to measure by volume for recipes, when developing your formula, you will want to convert the measurements to weight for accuracy. For example, if a recipe calls for 1 cup of diced rhubarb, the weight will vary depending on the size of the pieces. If you weighed the cup of diced rhubarb and you find it weighs 9 ounces, or 250 grams, you would have the same quality and more consistency by weighing for future batches. The metric system of measuring is a decimal system and can make the costing and measuring of ingredients more convenient and accurate. You need to review your recipe and your ingredients and determine the best way to measure your ingredients. When your recipe is upscaled, you will find it much easier to weigh the ingredient rather than measure by volume. For example, it's much quicker to weigh 1.7 kilograms of unsifted flour on a scale than measure 10 cups of unsifted flour using a measuring cup. If your recipe gives the ingredients in volume measurements, such as cups, to convert to equivalent weights, you need to measure the ingredient and weigh it. Liquid measurements, such as cups of milk, you may weigh it or just convert it to liters and milliliters. For smaller measures such as teaspoons or tablespoons, you would require the use of a more sensitive scale like a gram scale to get an accurate weight. Now that you have an understanding of converting all recipe ingredients to weights or volume, download worksheet number 9 titled Apple Cobbler and practice converting this recipe into metric weights and measures. Now that you have a basic understanding of why recipes need to be converted to weights, we will discuss the steps that are followed in the process of converting a recipe into a workable, repeatable production process formula. The purpose of following these steps is to create the formula in a very objective manner, providing measurement, tools, and standards which will allow you to make up the formula batch after batch without variation in performance, yield, quality, or safety. In this way, your company will profit from knowledge of accurate costs of production, yields, and realistic setting of profit margins through accurate price setting. The first step in converting your recipe to a production formula is to select and make up your favorite recipe. Keep the product for a comparison with the scaled-up product in step number 3. The second step is to take all of your ingredients that are by volume and convert them to weights. Do this and rewrite the recipe in terms of weights of ingredients. Step number 3 is to prepare the recipe again using the weight equivalents. Adjust the recipe and keep preparing until you are satisfied that the finished product compares favorably with your original recipe. When modifying the recipe, only change one ingredient at a time and record the change. Once you are satisfied, consider this your ideal product. Have a sample of it available for comparative purposes when modifying into a commercial product. The fourth step is to evaluate the ingredients. If your recipe uses a brand name product or blend, you will want to replace it with your own less costly mix of the blend's ingredients in order to reduce your costs. You can determine these basic ingredients through a combination of research and trial and error. Research similar recipes in a variety of cookbooks or online recipes and compare your ingredients to theirs. Identify the ingredients that your recipe is missing. There's a good chance that these are the ingredients in the brand name product in your current recipe. Experiment with your recipe, replacing your brand name product with the possible ingredients you've identified. You will probably need to do this many times. Each time you make a batch, change only one ingredient or amount until you are satisfied that you have an accurate replica of your recipe. Record the modifications to your recipe. Some ingredients may have to be replaced with commercial ingredients like cornstarch or gums instead of flour. Obtain commercial ingredients and make up the recipe until satisfied. Make sure that any modifications to your recipe are recorded. Step 5. In converting a recipe to a production formula, write the recipe in the format of a Standard Operating Procedure, or SMP. This is a step-by-step documentation of the ingredients used and the procedure used for each step of the process of bringing these ingredients together in a finished product. Step 6 is to make up the formula, no longer called a recipe, and measure all relevant objective parameters while progressing through the steps to create the finished product. Examples include temperature of mixture, density of batter, time and temperatures of ovens, pH, sugar concentrations, and whatever else is relevant, and measure it. Step 7 comes when you are satisfied with your formula and the finished product and you have identified relevant objective parameters. You need to write the SMP, incorporating the objective parameters and setting them as standards for the steps in making up the formula. For example, instead of saying mix on high for 3 minutes, say mix until a specific gravity of 0.8 grams cc is attained. Okay. Step 8 is to seek a professional evaluation for your formula. Seek advice from a research and development professional on ingredient selection, stability, and reliability of materials in finished products, and particularly the safety of the finished product. Once the formula has been evaluated by a professional and you are satisfied, you then move on to step 9 and scale up the formula to pilot plant level and prepare the formula dependent on your minimum batch size. Often this is determined by the size of equipment you have. Make adjustments as required, and since longer quantities of product are being made, prepare shelf life tests to determine how long your product can last without deterioration. This information will help to set code dates or point out the need to adjust formulas to improve shelf life. After you are satisfied that your product meets the demands of shelf life, quality, safety, reliability, and marketing approval, you move to step 10 and scale up the formula to production sizes and undertake short runs on this larger scale. When scaling up, make sure you round off decimal places to realistic levels to suit the actual scales being used. Sometimes one ingredient, like a color dye, may be too small a quantity for you to be able to maintain an accurate measurement. You can pre-mix this ingredient with another, called a carrier, for example sugar, salt, or water, in much larger quantities than your formula requires. You can store this premix in a separate container and use it each time you make a batch of your product. Since the smaller ingredient is equally distributed throughout the carrier, the net effect is that you get much more accuracy as you apply your formula. When you are satisfied that your production trials are running smoothly, objective parameters are accurate, and are controlling the makeup to form consistent, repeatable products, and the products are being made in a cost-efficient manner, you're ready for step number 11, to turn your product to the production department. At this step, you provide your finished formula, SMPs, and quality control standards based on objective parameters and expectations for efficiencies and yields. Step 12 is to monitor the production runs until you are satisfied that this department has the process under control. Provide technical assistance, train personnel, ensure tests are being performed and are accurate, carry out quality and storage testing, and revise SMPs until you are satisfied. The final step in converting a recipe to a production formula is step 13, and that is to move on to your next product that is in the development stage. Now that you have a basic understanding of scaling up a recipe into a production formula, download and print out worksheet number 10 titled Apple Muffins and create a standard manufacturing procedure or SMP for the formula. You will also need to download worksheet number 11, the supporting materials titled Formula and Standard Manufacturing Procedure Example, to help you in creating the SMP. Durable life is the period starting on the day when the product is packaged for retail sale, during which the product, when stored under appropriate conditions, will retain, without any appreciable deterioration, its normal wholesomeness, palatability, nutritional value, and any other qualities claimed for it by the manufacturer. Shelf life is primarily determined through laboratory testing along with sensory evaluation. Acceptable shelf life of food should be determined before products are marketed. An experienced food microbiologist can assess the shelf life of a given food product by inoculating test samples of the product with pathogenic and spoilage organisms, and then incubating the products under certain conditions, which simulate typical storage conditions, including temperature abuse. Some of the factors that affect shelf life are types of ingredients in the product, microbial quality of the raw ingredients used, pH of the product, water activity of the product, the presence or absence of preservatives, processing method, effectiveness of the packaging materials, storage conditions during distribution, retail display, and in consumers' homes, and finally, the likelihood of mishandling and/or temperature abuse. Our next subject in this module is record keeping and recall. Please press pause now and take a few moments to read this example of a safety alert issued by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. It shows the importance of record keeping with your products. The company mentioned in the alert, Sunfresh Limited, did not need to recall all of their X brand yogurt because the potentially contaminated product had a lot number. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency defines a lot number as any combination of letters, figures, or both by which any food can be traced in manufacture and identified distribution. If there was no lot number, the manufacturer might have been required to recall all of their product. The manufacturer determines the lot number or coding system for their products. Check some products in your kitchen. Many have lot numbers, others have best before dates, which identify the lot. The coding system documentation includes the definition of a lot for each product, how to interpret the lot number on each raw ingredient, how to interpret the lot number on each finished product, how ingredient lot numbers are linked to finished product lot numbers. The coding system helps the manufacturer to trace every step of the process in preparing and distributing the product. You must keep records on raw ingredients and suppliers to link the raw ingredient lot codes to finished product codes, processing procedure, monitoring of critical control limits, and corrective action from your food safety plan, distribution to link your finished product codes to the accounts, retailers, and wholesalers receiving the product. Make sure to check with the CFIA about making a recall plan and to determine how long you need to maintain your records. Keeping records will assist you if there is ever a recall of your product. In this section of the module, we will discuss production costs. To determine if your business is profitable, you must know all of the costs to produce your product. Knowing your costs will help you determine your price. In the business planning module, you were introduced to variable and fixed costs and the startup costs and operating costs worksheet. In this section of the product development module, you will focus on the cost of ingredients and production labor. In order to do this, you will need to download the cost sheet C, titled Cost of Ingredients, and cost sheet D, titled Production Labor. You will also need to download cost sheet A, titled Variable Costs, where the ingredient cost per unit from cost sheet C and production labor cost per unit from cost sheet D will be entered. It is important to determine the cost of ingredients used to make your product. When you download cost sheet C, you will find a table where you can list all of the ingredients, determine the cost for each ingredient, and the total cost of all the ingredients. By using this cost sheet, you will ultimately have an estimation of your cost per unit. Download and print out cost sheet C to determine your ingredient costs. To assist you with completing this cost sheet, a definition of each column is provided as a download document titled Ingredient Cost Sheet Definitions. The yield percentage in column C is normally 100% for any ingredient such as flour, sugar, raisins, salt, or spices, where you will use the full amount and there will not be any waste. However, other ingredients such as apples, onions, red peppers, and other raw ingredients do not yield 100% of their weight. For example, when you have an apple and you chop it up for a pie or chutney, you don't use 100% of the apple because you take off the peel and the core. Of course, you want to have consistency in the way the apples are cored so that you use as much of the apple as possible and don't waste. But you must take into account this waste when you estimate the cost of your ingredients. You can find valuable information on yields from searching the internet or specifically from the Chef's Book of Formulas, Yields and Sizes, where there's an estimated kitchen yield for most products. Often the information will be presented in the form of waste by percentage. For example, cleaning loss for red peppers is 20% by weight. If you don't have access to the book, you can still determine the yield percent for any of your ingredients. Weigh the product, alter the ingredient by peeling, coring, etc., and discard the waste. Weigh ingredient remains. Determine what percentage of original weight is the remaining material. To calculate this percentage, you divide the weight of the remaining ingredient by the original weight before alterations and multiply that answer by 100. Now, as a practice exercise, please press pause and follow the example table and complete the cost for the raisins. We have used kilograms and liters in this table as the units used in most formulas or recipes will likely be kilograms or liters. Seasonings, however, may be in grams or milligrams. Adjust accordingly. Cost per unit or package can be determined by taking the total cost of all ingredients and dividing that by the number of units or packages produced. However, before you can complete this calculation, you have to determine the number of units produced using this formula. Number of units produced equals yield divided by size of packaging. The steps in determining the number of units produced are: first, identify the size of your packaging in mils or grams. Second, identify the amount of your yield. In order for your calculations to be accurate, it is crucial for you to make sure that the amounts are in the same units of measurement. If necessary, convert the amount of your yield so that the yield and the package unit of measures will be the same unit of measurement. For example, both amounts must be in mils or both amounts must be in grams. Remember to change kilograms to grams by multiplying by 1,000 and liters to milliliters by multiplying by 1,000. Lastly, divide the yield by the size of packaging to get the number of units. Then insert the amounts into your formula. Cost per unit equals total ingredient cost divided by units produced. To ensure that you understand the costing formula, the following is a practice question for you to try and see if you understand how to determine the number of units produced. Please press pause now and complete the practice question. And then download worksheet 11 titled Apple Cobbler Ingredient Costs and complete the table to ensure you understand how to determine ingredient costing. We will now talk about labor costs. The amount you pay people to produce your product needs to be added to the labor costs. Even if you are doing the production yourself, you need to include a cost for your own labor. Start keeping track of the time it takes to make your product. Also include the cost for packaging and shipping preparation. Take a look at this sample labor cost table. Press pause and complete the costs for total labor. Download Sheet D of your operating cost worksheets for help in determining your labor costs for your own product. Once you have completed the production labor costing, you will use it to enter it into Cost Sheet A, your variable costs. Let's discuss sample testing, a very important component of product development. Will your product taste good, look good, be so appealing that your customers will want to come back for more? To know what your potential customers might think about your product, you might want to offer samples with an accompanying survey or a focus group. To get people's reaction to your product, you can test your food item in two ways. Test your sample versus a sample of a competitor's product, or use your sample by itself and conduct a single sample test. In this module, you will prepare a survey and get ready to test your food product to a group of people of your chosen demographic. They can be friends and family, but ensure they meet your demographic criteria. If you are doing a single sample test, it is suggested that you not show the packaging or advertising as you want to avoid influencing people. You can show the packaging if that is part of what you are testing. In order to do sample testing or focus group, you need to write a survey, which can take a lot of thought and testing to be effective. You must make sure your survey is not too long, a maximum of 6 questions if you are in a retail store, but maybe more questions in a person's home. Has clear questions that are short and unambiguous and give clear directions on how to answer the questions, with checking boxes or rating on a scale of 1 to 5. Keep the questions short and easy to understand, and ask for only one piece of information in each question. And finally, make sure your survey doesn't contain any leading questions. You want to know what the potential customer really thinks, not the answer you want to hear. Some things you may want to find out about your customer that is specific to food products. Does the customer look for new ingredients? Does the customer make an effort to buy locally? Does the customer consider himself an adventurous cook? To learn more about writing a questionnaire, research the internet and look at the links and resources at the end of this module. Regarding product quality, you may want to find out, did the customer enjoy the product? What was the customer perceived quality of the product? Does the product look appealing? How is the aroma, flavor, and texture? Is the nutritional content of the product important? If you want to get impressions on the packaging and labeling, you might want to ask about color, graphics, font size, and style. Importance of recyclability. Is the product one use or reusable? Packaging material. Glass, plastic, or something else?